Are you sick of that lousy smarch weather? Well, do not touch Willie. Just cozy up and enjoy the following 999 production. We've played it on the 2600. We've played it on the Intellivision. We played it on the 7800. Now, get ready, as it is time to tackle Donkey Kong on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Often touted as the retro home console version most faithful to the arcade, let's take a look at how valid this claim is. And, most importantly, is it still fun today? Background viewing. By now, you should know the drill. It's always a good idea to see multiple takes on something, so linked below in the description, I've made it easy for you to check out content from another creator related to the game I am about to review. Jeremy Parrish VideoWorks puts together some incredibly informative videos, so do yourself a favor and check out the background viewing I've provided for you in the description. Basics. The basics for Donkey Kong are the same in this version as all the others. Run, jump, ascend, avoid the baddies, collect the goodies. Oh, and of course, rescue Pauline before the bonus timer ticks down. By now, you know Donkey Kong. Overview. It shouldn't come as too much of a surprise that the NES port has the reputation for closeness to the arcade. One of the intentions of the hardware was to be able to play Nintendo's arcade games in a home setting. As is the case with all the versions we've covered to this point, it does lack the pie factor. Cement factory stage. And the looping nature with increased difficulty. Each loop is prevalent. My youthful experience. My very first experience with the NES did include some gaming with this title, and I liked it. I'm in the rare percentage of the population that actually liked Donkey Kong Jr. better, but personal preferences of 5-year-old Evad have had ample time to evolve. While I enjoyed Donkey Kong as a child, I only really had access to it a couple of times in my youth. They were enjoyable, but brief. I was not necessarily ready for a game with the difficulty curve that this had presented. When you're single-digit years old, or at least when I was, if a game was difficult, I wasn't determined to get better. I was determined to play something less punishing. The look. What can I say? This version of Donkey Kong looks fantastic. Jumpman, Donkey Kong, Pauline, the barrels, fireballs, the girders, all of it's here. Faithfully recreated. It's clear a lot of time and care went into bringing the arcade experience to the Nintendo Entertainment System, and with the hardware up to the task, the result is a surprisingly great visual experience for its time. As far as lag and sprite flicker, I didn't notice much of either. There might have been a rare flicker here and there when multiple enemies are on the same horizontal plane, but it's so infrequent that it could be a figment of my imagination. Frankly, if I did experience, I was probably too focused on not dying to even notice. As for lag, it's possible it's there, but it's so minimal that it's practically a non-issue. The animation frames are solid, some of the best among Donkey Kong ports. Sure, this is an early NES release, and while the console could eventually handle more advanced animations, the goal here was staying true to the arcade original. Given the hardware, the animations are pretty impressive. Overall, this game looks great on the NES, and I have zero complaints in that department. Sound. Absolutely. Undeniably. Without question. The best sounding port of Donkey Kong I've covered in this review series. It sounds great. I could pick it apart piece by piece, but X sounds good, Y sounds good, etc. isn't necessarily helpful. The tunes are done well, the sound effects are done well, and it has minimal deviation from the sounds of the arcade. If anything, one may have gripes about the squeaks and squawks of Jumpman's running, but this is nothing more and nothing less than what the original coin-op version possessed. And to me, personally, I like it. It's distinctive, and just from a step or two, I know what I'm hearing is Donkey Kong. Gameplay. In my previous review, I praised the 7800 port for its solid gameplay. knowing in the back of my mind that I still had the NES version to cover, like an unfinished chore lurking in the shadows, waiting to drop a barrel on me. And while the NES gameplay is, indeed, in my opinion, better than that of the 7800, the difference is smaller than I expected. Kind of like realizing 2 scoops of ice cream are equally delicious, but one melts a little faster. The NES version feels faster to me, which is a plus, though that also means I can fail more efficiently. Both versions are quite responsive, and the universal "don't buffer a diagonal to get off the ladder faster" rule remains steadfast, as if the developers wanted to ensure we all suffer equally across platforms. But overall, this version nails the gameplay factor. Controls are simpler and responsive. One issue I had, particularly on the spring stage, was jumping too soon after landing, resulting in no jump at all and my character running off the edge like an enthusiastic lemming. This, of course, is entirely on me, and not the game or the controls. The NES D-pad works well, making movement smooth. Almost too smooth, considering how often I gracefully swan dive into the abyss. That said, the game encapsulates the arcade experience very well, right down to the frustration. Other. The title screen presents you with 4 options. You can choose between game A or B, between 1 or 2 players, alternating, of course. Game A being the easier difficulty, although after a loop or 2, the difference seems negligible. The lead barrel does ignite the oil drum, so EVAD is satisfied. And, evidently, the drum has a deadly hitbox. Somehow this is something that surprised me. I seem to recall in the arcade version you can run behind it. Pretty sure the Intellivision port it's harmless as well, as Jumpman would run into it upon startup before I was able to eliminate some phantom left inputs on my controller some time ago. I don't recall ever trying this on the 2600 or 7800, so I guess if my curiosity gets the best of me, I'll have to try it out. Now, I did mention that this port, like the others, lacks the the cement factory. However, a version was released for the Wii that does include this stage, and some added cutscenes from the arcade. Authentic copies of this version are difficult to find, a little bit less so in PAL regions, but as I understand it, the ROM for this game, acquire it legally folks, does appear to be compatible on original hardware. Hint hint for all you flashcart users. I have not confirmed this, but sources I personally consider relatively trustworthy have stated that this is the case. Have you played it? Do you own it? Let me know how that version compares down below in the comments. The one-player experience. Well, as I mentioned, the 2-player option is alternating, so aside from waiting for the other player to finish their turn, there's no significant variance between 1 and 2-player action. Who would like this? As usual, anyone with nostalgia for Donkey Kong, especially this port, should have a fine time becoming reacquainted with it. While I really want to say that the hardcore high-score grinders of the arcade version would enjoy this, I have suspicion that might not be the case. Grinding a game at a high level has the potential to get you zeroed in on many nuances, ones that a casual like myself would easily overlook and be unaware of in a comparison setting. That said, I think those cranking out high scores on the classic arcade should, at the very least, nod an appreciation of how well this home console port looks, sounds, and plays. For most retro gamers, Donkey Kong fills a platforming itch that maybe doesn't last for hours on end. The looping nature does get repetitive quickly, but that's not such a bad thing since the increasing difficulty is an obstacle not easily mastered. It's good for a short play every now and then, but also, if you want to get more replay value out of this cart, you have 3 different objectives you can go for. Completing more loops than you ever have before, achieving a new personal best high score, or checking out some of the categories on speedrun.com and try to complete, or even optimize a category or 2. To me, this game does not have speedrun appeal, but for you, I'm not qualified to answer. Relevance today. I've mentioned in previous reviews of other versions of this game that Donkey Kong has a very active and very passionate following. Most of that, deservedly so, is for the arcade version. But the experience carries over to the NES very well. This is the home console port that is most readily available in modern times. As Nintendo releases it in nearly all of their old school re-release options, I see this port continuing on into the future via online or NES classic reboots, speculative, and as bundle packages of their classic IPs. Cartridges are available from all the usual places, your local retro game store, online resellers, garage sales, etc. Either in the standalone cart or the DK Classics cart bundled with Junior later in the NES's lifetime. Overall, this is indeed the best contemporary home port of the arcade from the versions I've reviewed. It looks great, it sounds great, the gameplay is magnificent. It edges out the 7800 port, but not nearly as much as I thought it would. Playing all these versions of Donkey Kong in a relatively quick succession allows me to appreciate the lesser versions quite a bit. Except for in television. That one's rough no matter how much kind of spin you try to put on it. But yeah, give this one a shot if you have the opportunity. Next, Donkey Kong. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you next mission.